to Actors Take, coming to you from the Captain's Lounge studio, located right here in Longmont, Colorado. And I'm not sure whether we should call this the Actors Take, What a Director Needs, or Writer's Remorse. Because we have got a little bit of everything sitting around this table. Today we're going to talk about BEETS. And I don't mean that very expensive audio equipment. I don't mean Ringo Starr, because for a real drummer you have to look at people like Ginger Baker. No, we're talking about the beats that grow in the ground. A very good friend of mine, Rick Padden, put together this show, and we're going to explain the show to you in a few minutes. First, let me do the introductions. On my right, Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Grumman. I was the director of BEETS, along with my co-director, Leslie Jones, and I've been performing since I was in first grade.
Thank you. Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicky Serduke. I was an actor in BEETS. I played Anna. I'm currently a student at the University of Northern Colorado, and I've been acting since before I can remember.
Or even earlier. Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott McCoppin. I was an actor in BEETS. I played Fred Hunt, the cantankerous old farmer. I've been acting since I was in high school, and even before that, and it just has been something that's been natural for me all my life.
So you were cast type then?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. And Rick.
My name is Rick Padden. I wrote the play. I'm a former journalist. I live in Loveland and have been bouncing around northern Colorado stages since about the year 2000. First acting and then turned to writing.
Wonderful. And of course, we first met at the Longmont Theatre Company.
Yeah.
You were my Lady Stumble Mumble.
I was, and wasn't I glamorous? I mean...
And we sort of stayed in touch ever since.
My first show in drag and last, probably, but it was fun. It was fun. And
people have seen me in drag, of course, in Chaps, and believe me, you looked a lot better than I did in drag. Anyway, that's another story. So let's get down and talk about BEETS. Rick, why don't you start off and just give us a bit of a synopsis of what the show's about and why you put it together?
Well, the why is the easy part. I was determined to be a playwright, and so I needed a play that could be produced. You had to start somewhere, and that's the beginning. And locally, I had some contacts, so that was a good place. I wanted to come up with a subject matter that would be of interest locally, and a low-budget show, and something that was actor-friendly. And being a journalist, I kind of leaned towards a historical subject matter, and actually went looking for this in past issues of the Berthoud Weekly Surveyor, where I was working as the editor at the time. Went back about 5 years and found a story that our local historian had written, Mark French, about Bob Lebsack, living in Berthoud now. He drove the pickup truck, or the truck, to and from Camp 202, hauling German POWs from the camp to his father's beet farm to work in the field as stoop laborers. And so it was just, ding, ding, ding. And as a journalist, even, there I had my headline for promoting the play. I had a subject matter. I never heard about it. I mean, most of us have heard about the Japanese internment camps, and the focus has been there. But very few people knew, and I didn't know, about German POWs being brought to U.S. soil. And it happened all across the country. 400,000 of them came to 500 camps, all but 2 states, I think, Nevada and Vermont.
So the show is probably cast about, what, 1942, 43?
44 and 45.
Oh, 44 and 45.
It goes through one beet growing season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then it follows the timeline of what was happening in Europe at the time.
Right. So the show actually is really depicting the rundown of the war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most wonderful.
Yeah.
Most wonderful. Scott, as an actor, how did you find actually acting this particular show?
I found it to be very actor-friendly, for my part. The dialogue was masterful. It flowed smoothly, and it was a very logical progression from one line to another, so you never just got caught with a line that didn't make any sense from one time to the next. There was one scene change that was kind of quick, but other than that...
I throw a lot of scene changes in, but that comes from being, I didn't grow up in theater and going to shows and stuff, and so when I started going, I got a little bored actually. And to me, breaking it up with a lot of scene changes is easier for us old guys, you know.
Yeah. Vicky, this must be interesting for you because this is a period of history that, I mean, you don't see much about nowadays. So how did you take the show?
My family was on the other side. My family is European. They were victims of the Holocaust, so I never got to see what happened in America or here. So it was really great learning about that, and now I talk about it all the time. I just can't shut up about the German prisoners of war here.
Most interesting. So Kathleen, you're the director. Obviously, the most important job you can do is get all of his mistakes and correct them. No, tell us a little bit about directing this particular show.
Well, it was interesting because the first time that we directed it, and I directed along with my co-director Leslie Jones, we directed it together. The first time we did it 8 years ago, and that was when Rick had just written the play. At the time
Rick.
At the time when Rick wrote it, of course, he had the dialogue, he had everything down, but what he didn't have a lot of is stage direction. So that was kind of up to Leslie and I to incorporate that in there. When we did it the second time, you know, we tried to throw a little bit more in there than we had the first time too. And so we kind of tried to just bring the writing and the movement together, I think, was what, you know, one thing for us was. And then this time we added some Andrews sisters in, and we added President Roosevelt in, and, you know, some different things that we hadn't done in the first time, just kind of change it up for Rick. Make it fun for him to watch again.
And I didn't add those things to the play this time.
Yeah.
I added the stage directions from the first time, but this time it's unique to their. They made it a show, the FDR piece at
Right.
Oh, it's
right.
It just made it and the more, you know, links that you can get to the audience through the music and through anecdotes. I had to be careful not to do, you know, information dumps in this because it is a historical play. But those links, those little historical anecdotes, were what established the closeness between the audience, and I think that's why it plays well with these audiences, because there's a similar age, older age level in the audience, and but the young people have been coming to it too because they didn't know about it.
Right.
It's just different.
Right. As a director, how often do you actually follow what's printed as stage directions?
You know, it's a guide.
I'll tell you now, I don't.
Right.
When I direct, I don't.
And I think it's a guideline because I don't think you really know exactly how you want everything to fit together
That's
until you
correct.
see your actors up on the stage and you see their characteristics, what they do. So I think that what's written in the script is a guideline.
Yeah.
And I think it's a place to start.
Right.
But like when we tell our actors, when we work with our actors, we're like, okay, now don't get mad at us, everybody, but we're tweaking this up until dress rehearsal. So,
that's what
that's the way it goes.
That's what blocking is all about.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
just fine tune, fine tune, fine tune.
Finding the bits, you know, finding missed bits is really important because, you know, I'll be sitting there watching going, like the bit with the one that played Isabel where she takes her towel over her shoulder and puts it down and takes off her apron and throws it down. And, you know, that's just saying to Fred, you're being a jerk. You know, how can you relate that in movement as well as with the words?
Right.
And so I think that's a cool thing about being a director, you know, to be able to see that.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, why don't we watch a clip from the show and then we can sit back and discuss what's just been seen. So let's look at clip number 1.
Don't be bitter.
Bitter? Me? My son is off in Europe somewhere, stuffed in a sweatbox of a tank, in the crosshairs of some Nazi that'd like nothing better than to barbecue him alive, and I'm not supposed to be bitter.
It will end soon, Fred.
I know, but cripes is my sugar beets are needy, and there's only Berthoud High School kids to help again this year.
They're strong workers.
Yeah, when you can get them to work. They're goofing off half the time. Those young bucks have one thing on their minds, and it isn't beets. Nazis here?
Yeah, it's all part of a plan to relieve the local agricultural burden. Common sense.
All part of a plan to relieve the local agricultural burden. What kind of bullpucky is that, Jim? You sound like a dang pamphlet.
All right, Fred.
They really want to put Nazis in our fields?
Yep.
Well, I got a shotgun that'll take 3 at a time.
Oh, now, Fred. Calm
Ain't no Nazi gonna set foot on my land! No way, no how!
down. Think, man. Free labor. Or almost free. And grown men. Ones who can take orders.
No!
Oh, it's smart, Fred. They gotta do something with them, don't they? Why not put them to work in the fields?
Because I don't want them!
Oh, they tried it out east in last year's harvest with some Italian prisoners. Down to Longmont, too. You didn't hear about that? Wasn't so bad, I heard.
No, I didn't hear about it. My land is what I pay attention to.
So there's a first video clip. Scott, you're a superb actor. I've seen you in so much that you have done in the past. But what was that scene like, actually acting it out?
Well, it was very satisfying for me to portray a character like Fred, who is, he has a lot of different levels. First of all, we see that he's a bitter person. He has a lot of prejudice. You might call him a bigot, but then you also discover that there's a reason behind his hatred. It's because of his son and how much he cares about his son, who's off to war fighting the very Germans that are working in his fields. And then we later in the play discover that his son is taken prisoner by the Germans, and so he's in a similar situation to the Germans who come out to work in Fred's field. And Fred has to deal with that, and he has to learn to come to grips with it. And so that whole process is a very, very artistically satisfying one for an actor.
Right. Rick, how much, obviously you did a lot of research for this show.
And that's really why Fred was of English descent. When I first got the idea, it just seemed like it would be just a concept filled with conflict. It just seemed natural. You know, German POWs in our fields, you know, and our sons are off fighting. In northern Colorado, actually, as I did the research, I found that northern Colorado has quite a population of Volga Germans. I mean, it was a very good place to be a German POW, actually, at the time, because the locals were pretty friendly. And so I needed to, and that was too easy, you know. I couldn't have it just, oh boy, everybody welcomes them here and everything's fine. There had to be some conflict, so that's why I made him of English descent.
Kathleen, directing scenes like that, how do you go about it? Because obviously you've got to be careful to keep everything very sharp, very focused, and at a speed that the audience has a chance to suck it all in. So how do you accomplish something like that?
Well, you know, this play in particular flows so well. And I think that, like Scott was saying, that the dialogue is pretty easy for the actors because it's very conversational. It's very conversational and natural. Most of the time when I direct, I'm like, pacing, people, get your speed up. This one, I think it just came naturally. So, I wasn't on the actors as much about keeping their pacing up because everything just flowed, like it would in a normal day conversation. So that part of directing, it was really, really easy. I think that when we saw Scott read the part, I mean, there was just really no question that he could do Fred. And I'd already worked with Scott before when I directed A Man for All Seasons, and he was Chapuis. And we knew that Scott was a great actor and that he could handle this and be irascible, but not make the audience hate him. You want the audience to love the character too. You just don't want him to be so irritating that the audience can't stand him.
Right. That's right, Scott just irritates all his fellow actors.
No, but he really did show versatility.
Exactly.
I think that's
Absolutely.
the key. There was when I was there when he auditioned, and you could just see the range. You knew it was there, and he's articulating well, and his voice is booming, and it's just everything we needed. I'm really glad you joined the show.
And he and Kurt had this great chemistry going on. I have to say, with this cast, they all had great chemistry. In fact, Vicky and Pam, who played her mother, so cute together, just had the cutest chemistry. So it was a cast that was very cohesive.
You mean it doesn't always work that way?
It does not always work that way.
Oh, you surprised me.
For me, it was very flattering and humbling to be selected by the author of the play, and to get to work with
Yes.
the person who wrote the character. That's probably the most unique thing that's ever happened to me in theater, is to actually
Fred's
have the
my
author.
dad's name, by the way.
Oh, really?
And Isabel is my mom's.
Oh.
Oh, nice.
He's gone, but she's almost 104.
Wow.
Still around.
Yeah, I don't know, man, if I can write plays that long. You know, if I live long like that. Oh, man.
Oh, dear. Vicky, you haven't said a word for a few minutes. You need to say something.
No, sorry, I was just so engrossed in what everyone was saying. But going back to Fred and his character, I thought when I was off stage, or even like when I was on, it was so, there was an atmosphere. I don't know how to describe it other than saying that there was this atmosphere that this was right. This was the right cast. This was the right show. We were doing everything so well. And there have been shows where you're there, you go to rehearsal, and then you go home and you thank God that you're home that night. But this definitely wasn't that. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Most excellent. Most excellent. Did you stand in the sidelines and actually watch what was
Oh,
happening?
absolutely. Almost every night, almost every rehearsal, I would just stand in the wings and try and see what was
See
happening.
what was happening.
Well, what was really fun, too, was that she was the understudy for Anna when the show was down in Denver. So it came back, and you got an opportunity to do it. And
Yeah, when she walked in, we were like, oh, we're sold. She's got the part.
oh yeah, and she and Dieter were perfect.
They were.
Perfectly matched. And
No, I thought it was really cool to say, because I did understudy for it when it was with the Aurora Fox, but it was so interesting seeing the different takes and interpretations that both the directors had, and it was interesting and quite amazing to see the different directions that the story could go, even though it's the same words.
Yes. A good friend of mine was out in the East Coast somewhere. I think it was Philly, but I'm not sure. He went to see the show, The Importance of Being Earnest. This is a show that is really, really hard to screw up. It is so well known. This director did it. And he said the reviews the next day, and this was a professional show. This was not community theatre. This was a professional show. And the reviews the very next day just slammed the show with what this director had done. And I don't think people realise just how important the director's role is, the writer's role is in getting that dialogue to flow and to drift
right.
in all the right directions.
And you asked earlier about the the working together and stuff. And on the first time, yes, working on the script, but this time, no, I stayed away, and because I trusted what they would do with it. They'd already done it once. They'd seen it at the Aurora Fox too, done differently. And we talked about a couple of little things that I liked better about the way it was done up here and so on. Some things were better down there. But I didn't go to rehearsals. I was available if anybody wanted to ask me questions or anything. But
in fact, you were just around the corner.
Yeah. In fact, that's part of the plan. I mean, if I'm going to be a playwright, if you're going to have published plays, you're going to hand them over to somebody. It's just the written thing. They don't have the benefit of your advice, and they just have to run with it. And while there are differences, there were differences between the shows.
That's right.
I still feel like the overall feel stayed the same, and that was real gratifying for me, because you want it to be you want it to show up kind of the way you wrote it, and
Consistent,
yeah.
Kind of an interesting thing, though. Before Scott and Kurt came in to audition for us, we didn't know if we had a Fred, and we were like, you know what, Rick, you may have to be Fred in this production.
Yeah.
So he almost got to act in his own play if Scott hadn't shown up.
I almost turned around and went home on my way to that audition.
Oh, I'm so glad you
Believe it or
didn't.
not. I got almost there, and I thought, no, I don't want to do this.
Okay, now I think now's a really good time. Let us have a look at the second clip that we wish to show.
I can't believe this is really happening, and Pops is going along with it?
Let's just say I helped him get along with it.
It was your idea.
Anna, we had no choice.
Ma!
We had no choice, Anna. Your pa can't thin those rows by himself. His knees won't take it anymore. And sometimes...
No! No times. These are Germans, Ma. They want to kill Jake, and they probably want to kill us too. They're animals!
They're just boys. Just like the boys you go to Berthoud High School with. And the war's over for them.
It's not over for me. Not until Jake comes home.
War is, it has to be done.
What happens if Jake gets captured? Well, what then? Wouldn't you want him treated civilized?
Of course.
This is our home, Fred. This is our town.
If we don't kill them, they will kill us, don't you understand that? They'll take our town, everybody's town. That's what they're all about.
Not these boys. The war's over for them. Hitler's on the run. He's finished. They know it and we know it. We'll take Berlin soon.
Thank God.
Exactly.
What?
Some need to thank God. Some need forgiveness. Church is for both, Fred.
Don't preach to me.
We need to give them a place to go for forgiveness.
They can go to hell. Is
What?
am I filled with hate? You'd tell me if I were, wouldn't you?
No, Fred. Not hate. Fear.
I'm not afraid of...
Fred. We can't let this take root here. Not here. Don't be afraid.
So there was clip number 2. Vicky, we get to see you on stage for the first time.
Yeah.
Doing a scene like that, how involved in the character do you become?
It was very difficult for me at first to find such a place in my character's heart for hatred. As a person, as myself, I try to be as open and loving to everything as I can. But the further I got into her, the further I looked at it, I began to understand it more. And I think Scott was saying earlier about how once you understand the reasoning behind the hatred, it's a lot easier to understand it and show it and portray it. Personally, I've never had anyone in my family be deployed while I was alive.
Right.
But I do have friends, and it just took, who are in the military, who are in the Army. And so it took a lot of finding things that were on the similar level and important to me that could cause such tension.
Yes. You see, one of the things that people today don't understand is at the Second World War and the First World War, there was so much propaganda generated by the governments about the enemy. There was a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was like here in Colorado, but when we did Chaps, I did a lot of research because we had posters all over the walls of the propaganda generated by the British government.
Right.
And they really impressed, you know, the evilness of the enemy. And it's not something, I don't think it really even happened, did it, during the Vietnam War?
No, And even in this, they were actually, the German POWs were exposed to a lot of propaganda at the camp. The movies that they watched portrayed Hitler and Mussolini in certain ways that they weren't real happy about it. But they recognized it as propaganda too.
I'm sure they were shown that famous Chaplin movie.
Yeah.
Which he portrayed Hitler.
Yeah. But this was
quite something.
You know, I wasn't sure. I wanted to try my hand at romance, you know, in the play too. They had. I'm not going to do a play with all guys up there, and so there needed to be women as well. And but it wasn't really natural. That it was hard to determine just how much fraternization was going on, how much really was allowed. They weren't supposed to fraternize at all. They weren't supposed to go out in the fields, you know. So yeah, we could introduce a romance, but it had to be kind of delicately done. And so she needed to resist.
Yes.
And the brother gave both of them good reason to resist, and actually strung you out through the whole play because she wouldn't be free until her brother came home. Until then, she was going to view him as a terrible German POW. You know.
Yes, yes. Scott, there's another part of your character coming out there with the anger and the depth of your anger. How difficult was it, sort of like getting your mind around who this character really was?
Well, this one wasn't as difficult for me because I've known so many Freds throughout my life. I've met so many of them, and you know, they're very hard-working, tough people, and they live off the land, and they are devoted to their families, and so it's not hard to understand a person like Fred, especially when you look at it, as you say, in the context of World War II, when there was a lot of propaganda, dehumanizing art and movies, and that was the norm back then. So people were, it was almost allowed. People had permission to hate the enemy, and that was okay. And Fred had particular reason to, maybe. So as much as Fred was dislikable, he was also very human and someone that you could identify with, that you know yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kathleen, did you do any research into this before you took up the director's reins?
Well, I did. You know, that's something that we like to do a lot of before we take up the show. Actually, I grew up on a farm that we had beets on the farm, so you know, that part of it I was really familiar with. But as far as the World War II and everything, you know, in my family we love history, so delving into the history is actually a treat. And when Vicki found her book about the prisoners of war that were in Nebraska, you know, we all really got into it, looked at the prisoners of war. That's kind of one thing about this theater experience, I think, is when you bond with your cast and then you can all get into the history of it and find out what the real context was. I think that it just makes the show a lot more rich, I think, because you have the background, you know, and kind of getting back to the propaganda thing, I think that she has a line, Isabel, in the play where you're not filled with hate, Fred, you're filled with fear. I think that was what the propaganda was for, is to inspire fear.
Absolutely.
And that was the whole start of the ignorance, of the hatred and everything. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do Rick's play at this time, because, you know, we're experiencing this politically right now. And it all stems from a fear of not really knowing and a lot of ignorance about, in this case, what it is to be a German POW. Mm-hmm. You know, and then when Fred starts to know Dieter, that's when those walls get broken down. So I kind of thought that it was an important thing to do at this time, really.
Right, right.
Well, the first time around, back in 2009, of course, we were just beginning to learn about Guantanamo and treatment of prisoners down there. So it was timely at that time. And then about the time it came back in 2015, we were going back to that as the subject of closing and what to do with those people came back. So there was some relevance, you know,
right,
both times.
Yes. So I think we should now sit down. Let us watch now clip number 3 from BEETS, written by Rick. Clip 3.
Anna. Come, dear, we're all waiting.
Was ist das?
Dieter, no talking to the ladies. That's the rules.
Johnny, relax. It's all right. These are my guests, and I want them to feel welcome. So do be polite.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
Is he talking to me?
Yes, dear, answer him.
What?
What is that for?
I'm not supposed to talk to them, Mother. What do I do?
This is our farm, dear. I make the rules here, and I say you can talk.
But I thought Pop said
He's not here. And when he's not here, I'm in charge of this farm, and I say you can talk.
corn. It's corn, as you can plainly see. Have you never seen corn on the cob before?
It is for cows. Only cows and pigs and horses eat that.
Are you calling me a cow?
What? No,
But since you're a pig, this should fit you just fine.
Anna!
I don't understand.
Anna, put it down.
This war is a hell. You truly do not know how much so.
Yes, but it's almost over. Hitler is on the run.
Der Führer will not let Germany fall without a very bloody fight, Fräulein.
Teach the children the Bible, he says. Teach them when they're small, because it is too late after they're grown up.
I lost my pocket Bible out in the field.
We captured a group of Jerrys walking along the road holding up handkerchiefs 2 days ago. I tried to ask one a question, Anna. I asked if he felt bad about this war, but my German is terrible. He just wrote this on a piece of paper, and I don't know what it means. Gefangenen des Schicksals. So much for talking with the Jerrys. You know what it means, Dieter?
I know it well.
And?
Gefangenes des Schicksals means prisoner of fate, of circumstance. We are all Gefangene, Fräulein.
I wish to be set free, Dieter.
As do I, Fräulein.
I won't be free until Jake comes home. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I understand.
You know, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah?
And I shouldn't even talk to you.
Yeah? But you do.
So there was clip number 3, and while that was playing, Kathleen sort of mumbled under her breath, "This was my favourite scene." So, Kathleen, why was it your favourite scene? Because this show is packed full
It is.
of favourite scenes.
It is. And what you saw there was just the first part, the beginning part of that scene where the German soldiers come. But at the end of that scene, what happens is Dieter decides that he's going to ask Anna to play Lily Marlene. Then Dieter gets up and sings Lily Marlene, and then he's joined by the 2 other Germans, Franz and Karl. Then everybody's singing Lily Marlene, and they're dancing, and people are having a good time. We've got a musical. First act ends on a big bang. Everybody claps, yay! You know, it was just a really delightful scene to do, and it was my favorite scene to watch. I could watch that scene time and time and time again and never get tired of it. I just loved it.
Yes, I was lucky enough to direct The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe at the LTC, and there's a scene there where Aslan gets killed. So we had him at the back of the stage with a red light on him, and then the Narnians come in and sing this beautiful a cappella song, Field of Green. And I had them just holding oil lamps.
Oh,
wow.
Which was really something.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was about 12 of them with about 8 oil lamps. And my aim was to get the audience to cry every night. And we succeeded.
Oh, very good.
Wow.
That's got to make you feel good.
That was my all-time favourite scene. So yeah, I know exactly how you feel about this.
Well, and Lily Marlene was another one of
absolutely.
those connections to the audience, because I remember at the premiere, there were people singing it.
Yes.
Yeah, and they knew the words. It was popular on both sides of the Atlantic.
Oh, it
during the
was.
war.
Just like Anna says.
What was your feelings like doing a scene like that? There's just the 2 of you on stage. So you know, I mean, that's when the pressure is at its highest.
Yeah, with the letter and knife scene, it was just the 2 of us, but I don't think it was as scary or intimidating because Ryan, the guy who plays Dieter, we had great chemistry. I mean, we're friends. And
did you know him before you did?
No.
So you became friends during the show?
Yeah, I remember the first time we ran that scene, I was thinking, oh my God, he's actually really cute. Oh no, I can't do this. I was like, Kathleen, what have you done? But no, it went very well. The chemistry was great. It was great building that relationship each night, each rehearsal, each show. It was
And you just kept building it and building it and building it. Yes, I've never had a chance to do a scene like that, unfortunately. The closest I came was in Elephant Man, where I played Bishop Howe. And there's a scene in Elephant Man where the doctor has a total and utter breakdown. And he literally has a 5-page monologue. And I had to stand on stage while he is doing this 5-page monologue, breaking down. And that was tough going.
Oh, yeah.
That was really tough going. Very difficult, very difficult. Scott, you weren't in either of those scenes. What do you feel about it? Do you think the show is beginning to now start to meander in a different direction?
Well, the love story is really important to the show because that's what makes it of more than just local interest. You know, the history is what makes it of local interest, but the love story, the story of forbidden love, is something that transcends millennia and culture. So that was an important thread in the show to make it more than just, as you say, an information dump.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And it needed to be restrained, obviously, because you couldn't go too far with the relationship. And, you know, there needed to be some distance held between them, or kept between them. And one of the things I feel really strongly about, particularly with love scenes and love stories, is, like you said, that the imagination can do way more than any writer can. Because you've got 400 imaginations going at the same time out there. So I try to avoid explicit language and sex and violence. And I'm a John Steinbeck fan, so I'm really kind of interested in the literary aspect of it. And so the set needed to be simple, and the language needed to be simple, and just, like you said, hopefully conversational, and nothing too explicit.
It's the taboo relationship.
Yeah, there's nothing
that
like
makes it
unrequited
tantalizing.
love, and forbidden, verboten love.
One interesting thing about that is, and you didn't know this, Rick, is from that other clip that we just watched where Anna says, you shouldn't be here, and he goes, well, yeah, but I am. And we actually, it was kind of a technical thing because they couldn't black out fast enough. And I said, if you don't black out fast enough, just go ahead and kiss her, Ryan. Well, we tried that and it didn't work. It just did not work because you need that tension there because then in the next scene when they're together, that's where he kisses the back of her neck and he kisses her hand, and that worked so much better. And that was the appropriate time for it. The appropriate time was not at the end of the scene that we just saw. So it was interesting.
And there was you thinking your luck had changed. There was a little bit in there, wasn't it, where they're holding hands?
That was that wasn't in the same scene. That was in a later scene.
That was in a later scene?
Right, and that was in the second act.
That's right.
Right, Vicki?
The
Wasn't that the first
letter
scene of the
knife
second
scene
act? Yeah.
we just saw.
Yeah, and where they're talking back and forth about the letter, and I think that Vicky's line is, or his line is, "You wish to be set free." Is that the one?
Yeah, I would like to be set free, Dieter. And then he's like,
and she
so
puts
do
her,
I.
and it just happened that the table was there, and she just would like inadvertently put her hand on the table, and I said to Ryan, when you say that, make a deliberate grab for her hand there so she can jerk it away, and we thought that was, as we worked it out, we thought that fits because she'd like to give in, but she can't. She's not free.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and that's the kind of fine tuning, on directing that you really appreciate as a writer, because I didn't choreograph that stuff.
Actually, that's what makes an audience appreciate a show.
Right.
Are the little nuances that directors and actors can slip in.
Yeah, yeah, and especially as the show goes on.
Oh yes.
The changes that are made. And the opportunities that are taken advantage of, when you're seeing the audience react, like to the Bob thing, they threw in, oh boy, that might take us too long to explain that, but, and I've had to explain it and talk to every director about keeping it in the show because it worked. There's a little thing where they raise their hand whenever the word Bob is mentioned. And that's a nod to my family. It's a personal thing that we do in our family. I think it actually began with when our kids were little. Bob Dole was running for office, and he had a campaign that said, "Raise your hand if you like Bob." And the kids took that and just, it evolved, it just kept going, and it's been in the family forever. Well, we did that in the show. And, but they threw in a couple extras, knowing where it was getting the laughs. I think the last time it was done, all the prisoners did it.
Right, the German
that wasn't
prisoners
in the
did
play,
it. Right.
and it worked beautifully, you know. And so those are the little tuning things, and it's the letting your actors take you. I think the directors need to do that too. They let the actors kind of lead the way a little bit, and a good director knows when to jump on that and say, yeah, that's what we want. Because it's just like with the language.
Yeah. Also, a director needs to sometimes pull them back.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
Right. That's true too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
in
that's
fact,
how an actor knows when he's in the right place.
That's correct.
Is when the director dials him back just that
Just a
notch.
tad. Yes.
And then that's, you know that you...
Because it's easier to bring him down than it is to get him bigger sometimes.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And it's tough with his lines, you know, with Fred's lines, because you don't want him to be angry through the whole show.
Right, exactly.
And you know, they say in theater that it's much easier to act angry than it is sad and laughing and happy and stuff. Anger seems to come naturally for everybody, but it's that shift from that anger to what comes next, you know, and that's the range that I'm referring to. That's what's important, and that's where the director says, yeah, this is the spot for that, you know. So I'm just tickled with the direction and the cast and everything about it.
The way it all gelled together.
The way it all, yeah, the lighting,
Right.
the set, you know,
And she's not here, but my co-director, Leslie, she was really good. She's a good fine-tuner, too. And so she was really good at going in and saying, you know, Scott, you're hitting one note here. You need to kind of bring it back now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's wonderful at that.
One of the things with the history of the play that I will forever be grateful for was that the words and the script stood, you know, a different kind of test. Dieter was cast in the first show with Taiwanese.
Dale was Taiwanese.
Dale Lee was of Taiwanese descent, and obviously so.
And he didn't look
you've
like
got,
a German.
You've got an Asian
yeah.
actor playing a German POW with dark hair and everything else, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful, and the audience didn't blink at all. And to me, and there was resistance, you know, from the producers. This was kind of a joint production the first time around, and there was resistance. And Kathleen and Leslie stood their ground with that, stood behind that actor because he was so good.
Well, the entire audience knew he came from Freiburg. What more can you say?
I always say a good actor can make you believe whatever they want you to believe.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Amy Jo, she had never, ever, ever, ever been to a theatre before in her life, and she came along to see Chaps. And she said it was, afterwards, she said it was interesting, Nigel, she said, for the first 60, 70 seconds, I was sitting there thinking, that's my friend Nigel on stage, that's my friend Nigel on stage, and then all of a sudden, it was, that's Leslie Briggs Stratton on stage, my character.
Yeah, yeah.
Which as an actor was probably one of the greatest compliments I've ever been given.
That's huge.
It really, you know, shows that you're doing what you need to do. We have one more clip that we'd like to show and have a general round table of, so I think now would be a very good idea. Let us see clip number 4.
9.
And no more making things for her. Yeah?
9.
Then we understand each other. Yeah?
9.
Don't you defy me, you little twerp! I'll pull you off that chair like a beet from the ground!
9, Herr Hund, you will not.
Why, you
You are much like my father.
Your father?
He was a simple man too.
Simple? I'll show you simple!
9, Herr Hund, it was not an insult. It is a compliment.
Well, you could have fooled me.
Did you think that I did not have a father? Or a mother?
Well,
She was older than Frau Hund, but much like her as well. Both lived simple lives.
Well, of course I knew you had parents. I just did.
And I have a younger sister, and a dog, and a piano, and a bed of my own back home.
Well, of course you would.
And friends, dreams, plans and fears. I sleep and eat just like you. Except corn. I won't eat corn.
And regrets?
Yes, but personal ones, Herr Hund. I love my country.
And I mine.
Then we have something in common.
Very little.
So little?
Yes.
Both of my parents were born and raised on farms.
Oh?
It was a hard life for them. And for me. I worked hard.
Well, life is hard for everyone.
It is true. But their goal was to move to the city and start a new life.
And did they?
In time, yes. But then my father got sick. Don't you want to know his name?
Not especially.
Peter. And my mother was Anna.
Anna?
Strange, ne? I loved my country, Herr Hund. I did not know it would come to this. I was only a boy.
Well, old Johnny's getting nervous. You better go now.
Herr Hund,
What?
I still love her.
Well, you love your country, but my daughter is still verboten.
Yeah, I understand.
Oh, and I think I have something that belongs to you.
My pocket Bible.
So you're not Jewish?
Not me. My mother. Danke, Herr Hund.
That's thanks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Danke, Dieter. I hope we understand each other now.
So that was clip number 4. Rick, it looks to me like you really nailed the characterizations, the feel of the mid-40s in the Second World War. How did you manage to actually get that down on paper? Because even the language is sounding right. It's not modern-day English. You seem to have sort of pulled it back quite nicely to how people would have verbalized back in the mid-40s.
Well, I mean, I'm a baby boomer. I grew up watching World War II movies, you know, and John Wayne, and both my parents were born on farms, and so I was comfortable, I think, you know, writing. It's scary sometimes as a writer. For instance, you worry, okay, can I write a female character? Can I? Is this going to sound like a woman? Is this she going to think like a woman? I mean, I don't know. All I know is what I think they sound like. You know, I guess. Did you feel that it was, you know, that the language is appropriate for the gender and the age?
Oh yeah, I thought it was very genuine.
Okay. And I spent a lot of time. I don't know. One of the things that helped a lot with the language was that I used real letters that were written home and appeared in the birthed paper. I spent a lot of time in the library reading those, and just the way that's where the language of the period came from, because it was from the period, and that's the way they were talking. We got away with some slurs in there too, Jerry's and Krauts and.
But of course, that would have been normal then.
Absolutely.
It would not be normal today. Today
No.
it would be considered politically incorrect.
Right, absolutely.
But back then, yeah.
Yeah, it's just very gratifying to hear it come out and back at you. And you know what's really interesting too is you can have these big scenes and it's a real dramatic moment, and it's a hard moment for the characters in their lives. and you'll get laughs.
Yes.
It's just wonderful, and it's so much, and that is human nature, because the audience doesn't want to. They don't want to be bummed out very long. They don't want to be really sad. They do cry during the show, and that was gratifying. I hate to say it, but it's like, wow, they're crying.
Well, no,
And then
no,
they're
no.
laughing. And
Yeah,
then-
but as a writer, it means you did it correctly.
yeah. Well,
You directed it correctly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they
and you
acted it,
guys, of
yeah.
course, acted it correctly.
and it's just tremendous. But it is interesting how the audience can find places to laugh in the most serious of scenes.
Oh, yes.
You know, and it's just human nature. That's how we deal with. You know, I mean, what's the best eulogy you ever heard? It's the funny one.
It's the funny ones.
Yeah.
Well, and the scene, the way you wrote the scene where they find out that their son has been taken prisoner, you wrote that as a funny scene. It's a funny scene, even though
Right.
it's a tragic event that has taken place.
Yeah.
And that plays so well because the audience wants to be relieved of their discomfort, and they
Right.
want a chance to laugh, and they're looking for that outlet. And that the way that scene was written, it was so brilliant because you used the comedy and the tragedy together to carry that scene.
When the soldier, the guard, comes carrying a telegram, and everybody knows immediately what that meant or what that would mean. Nobody's ever mentioned it, but did you notice the scene with the telegram and the scene with the knife when the German POW makes Anna a knife? They were allowed to make cutlery and everything else. Did you notice that those are mirrored scenes? Look at the structure of the scene. They're identical.
I guess that's true, but that hadn't occurred to me at all.
Okay, I guess
I
I'll
guess
just
I was
be
concentrating
satisfied
on what the
owning that
context of what was
myself.
happening in the scene. But yeah, you're right. It is.
Yeah.
Thinking on
You
it.
can't be here and go away and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Anyway.
There were a lot of parallels, I thought, between Anna and her parents. So I saw that. I didn't take it to that level that they were mirrored scenes, but
Yeah.
I did notice that Anna and her mother talk very similarly. She has the same beliefs as her dad. So I think you did a really good job with that.
You know, it was one of those things, and I've been trying to duplicate it ever since. You know, I mean, trying to come up with something as strong as BEETS was. But I think a lot of it has to do with not enough stress in my life. I wrote BEETS when I was in a very stressed time period, and so it saved my life because I was, not to be over dramatic about it, but it gave me a focus because it was written in like 21 days, the basic play. So I mean, that's all I did, day and night, for 21 days, and it gave me, you know, something to focus on. It's like losing weight. I don't lose weight unless I'm stressed, you know. So, I have to ask my wife, you know, can you get a little pissed off or something? I mean, I'm getting heavy here. Yeah.
You can always call me.
Yeah. There you go.
Because I know I can stress you out. Scott, we're seeing a softening of your character.
Yes.
And it was really working beautifully. And even in that scene, we saw it go from softer to even softer.
Well, the whole feeling of this scene between Fred and Dieter is different because now it's not a German POW working in his fields. It's a young man who's courting his daughter. And it doesn't matter who he is. Fred is going to deal with him in the same way. And so he drills him. And
At least it wasn't with the shotgun that kills 3 people.
but it's the classic story of the farmer's daughter and the German POW. You know? Stay away from my daughter. And as the scene progresses, and Fred begins to look at Dieter as a human rather than this dehumanized caricature, he begins to identify with him, and he finds out that he's from a farm. He's from a farm family, and so that gets Fred's interest right away. And a lot of the experiences that they had were probably similar growing up. But at the very end, when Dieter's talking about how they were all boys and they didn't really know what was happening, and Fred looks at him, he sees Jake. He sees his son.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
He makes that correlation between them. Yes.
and that's where he cracks.
And the Jewish part there, having him be Jewish was just an additional complication, but there really were German Jewish Luftwaffe pilots.
Yes.
A few. There was just a handful that Hitler actually declared of German blood because they were related to high-ranking officers and they were good, and he needed them. So he said, "Oh, you're not Jewish anymore. Now you're German."
Have you ever worked on any derivatives of this show for other areas of America? Because I know this was taking place, the concept was taking place all over America at this time.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I felt that it could have wheels almost anywhere in the country. I mean, I did a little research in in a very short period of time. I was able to rewrite the play with a little bit of local research on Concordia, Kansas, and called it Wheat. And then I did one. I've got another version for Nebraska. What's that state? You know, where they got the corn. But I haven't done anything with them. I mean, you know, unless you get somebody behind you, like a good director, it doesn't matter how well you can write. If you can't market, then you're not going anywhere. And so that's been, you know, the challenge.
The challenge, yes.
This one marketed itself. It had all those little elements, you know, that made NPR interested in doing interviews on it, and all the major media in Denver and stuff. We got good publicity up here, you know, and so I'm going to be, you know, I guess I'll be the vegetable playwright, or you know, the other show they did was the Great Loveland Potato Hoax.
Right.
Of course, if you rewrote it for England, you'd have to call it the Swede.
The Swede?
Swede. Rudebaker.
Oh.
Rudebaker over here, Swede in the United Kingdom.
Oh, interesting.
And actually, the Swede in England, up until the start of the Second World War, was pig food.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow.
It was never considered for human consumption.
Just like corn.
Just like that. And then, of course, what happened was, boom, people started trying it, and all of a sudden they discovered Swede with gravy is wonderful. You know, so very, very, very similar.
But I have done other, I kind of got into, you know, and I didn't want to become a formula playwright and say, okay, this worked, that's what I'm going to stick to. But I did do, since being a journalist, I did do some more historical plays, and wrote one for Estes Park that's got all their historical characters in it, and one for Denver, Queens of the Row, which is a musical. That one is set on Market Street in Denver and deals with the two most notorious madams of the late 1800s, Maddie Silks and Jenny Rogers. Fun show. And I
remember you struggling with that at the start, wondering how to get all the characterizations to work correctly.
Right. And I don't know. It's just sometimes things just happen like this, and it's just everything's right about it, and everybody involved is right, and it just works, and it's just it's difficult to duplicate. You kind of think, okay, well, if this was good, then they're going to ask me what else I've written, right? Yeah, and then I'll open the drawer and okay, well, which one, what style, what would you like to read now? You want a comedy? I wrote a comedy now, you know. It's
so anyway,
tough to
bringing us back to BEETS just for a second, does anyone have any final words that they'd like to say about their little piece of BEETS? Why don't we start off with Scott?
Well, the thing that attracted me to the play was the history involved, because like the audience, I myself am interested in Colorado history. I've lived here for years, most of my life. I went to the University of Colorado. I took some courses in Colorado history there, so a lot of these things were things that I was aware of and that I knew about. And the themes that ran through the play were things that I learned in college. The idea of the sugar economy in the area and how that runs throughout the play. The very first line of the play is, where did you get sugar? They grow all the sugar beets in the world right here. They're manufacturing it in towns all across the planes, and yet they have to ration their sugar for the war effort. But the prisoners get candy bars, and we don't. And just little things like that really hit home. That was the funnest part to me of that play, was living out and acting out that history that I had learned about in college and throughout my life.
I was a history major for a year.
You were?
Yeah. That's what you do in college when you don't know what you want to do.
Right.
Or take up journalism.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, you did.
Journalism, yeah. I'm doing them all. I'm trying to go through all the most hated occupations. I was a journalist. Now I'm a real estate broker.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I need to be a lawyer now.
Vicky, your feelings?
Oh my goodness, I have so many. But like Scott was talking about, just the history, knowing that what we were doing, actually, not necessarily word for word verbatim happened, but these things happened, similar stories happened, and it was life-changing, honestly, when we did promotions and after the show, to see people saying, this really happened, here's my story, this is what happened to me, and just seeing how much this impacted a lot of people, because I think that's what theater should be. It should be something that people can connect to and something that impacts them, and it was amazing to be a part of that.
Good, good. If I picked you up from here and put you back in 1944, do you think you could survive? No cell phones, no television.
I think the biggest issues in the 1940s were the sexism and the racism and the inability for women and people who weren't, just a lot of political issues that I wouldn't be able to deal with.
But you could have been on the side of a bomber.
You do realize that back then it was not sexism and it was not racism and it was not considered either.
Absolutely, it was normalized then.
It was normalized then.
But plopping me back from now with what I know now, it wouldn't be okay for me.
Right, it would shock you and horrify you, yes. Kathleen, hair director,
Yes.
your final thoughts?
Well, kind of going with what both Scott and Vicki said, the historical aspect of it was wonderful. But if you just take on what it was as a play to direct, for me it's a wonderful thing because it's a very much ensemble piece. So everybody has their little piece of it. Everybody has their little starring moment. Everybody has something special that you can work on as a director to make them shine as an actor. And to me, that's a cool thing to find in a play. They're not all like that. So I think that's kudos to Rick on writing it so well.
That's wonderful. Let's give the final word to the playwright. Rick?
Well, that's incredible to hear, I guess. I think overall, for me and anybody else that's out there starting off in playwriting, and now I can actually say I'm a playwright. I've had a couple produced, and this one produced multiple times. I thought I wasn't going to be a playwright until Samuel French picked it up, and it was published, and they're doing it in high schools across the country. Well, the way it's happened, and watching local audiences enjoy it, and the actors and everybody. On a previous show with you, you said it was an important play, and that was like, oh wow, wow, what a thing to hear.
Well,
what a thing to hear. I did something important, and it doesn't need to be a national thing. In fact, if Samuel French were publishing it, I would get much smaller portion of the rights.
Oh, yes.
But
the sad thing, Rick, is that people of Vicky's age don't understand a lot of this history of what went on.
Yeah. So when I actually had people my age and younger come see the show, and in the audience, and afterwards they tell me that, wow, this was eye-opening. It was not, like you said, it's not something they knew. There was this little girl, I think she was 6, her name was Faith. She came up afterwards and she started asking me all these questions like, did that really happen? And just started asking me questions about the history, and it was just amazing to see that someone who probably hasn't even heard of World War II yet is learning and is interested in learning about that.
That's good. That's good.
And it's changing. I don't know. I was glad that they revisited it. I was worried that, well, is 8 years long enough in a town like Loveland to wait? I thank everybody involved. Thanks for having us on here to talk
Thank you
about
so
it.
Oh, you're
much.
very,
So
very
much fun to
welcome.
revisit it.
That was Actors Take. Over and out. You guys